So first of all, who is Tesisquare? So who are we? Well, we're a company that has been founded 25 years ago in the north of Italy, 1 hour south from Turin in a city called Bra, and have ever since shown a steady growth when it comes to revenue and the amount of personnel. So you can see that we've increased the revenue between 2017 and 2019 with 36%, and also the amount of employees have grown significantly, grown up to a number close to 400 last year. The international growth is twice as fast as the national growth. The reason for this is that we have decided to, more or less 7 years ago, to apply an international strategy to focus more on growing the international business. So right now the international business is growing twice as fast as the national business. And we're present in 44 countries with our solutions, have over 200 international customers, and 25% of the projects that we do are abroad, so outside of Italy. So the headquarters is based in Italy, as are a couple of our other offices, so in Milan, Turin, Rome, Padua, Genoa, and Bologna. And we've opened offices also in Spain, France, Germany, and the international headquarters where I'm based in Amsterdam. A couple of facts and figures that are important to us. First of all, we have over 42,000 companies that are working in our collaborative network. So the type of companies could be suppliers, carriers, anybody active within your supply chain, basically. And we manage over 300 million transactions a year through our platforms. An important figure for us is the customer retention rate, which is 99.8%. This is for us very important because this means that customers not just start with one of our solutions and then stop the projects, but in general move on with switching on one or more modules of our solution offering. So this is of course very important for us, as you can imagine. So the subject of the presentation is of course end-to-end visibility. So you can only accomplish this by collaborating within supply chains, and collaboration, as we say, is in our DNA, or is our DNA basically. So since 1995, we've set out on a path to deliver collaborative solutions to innovate business processes. We specialize in so-called collaborative platforms with which we connect the different processes in supply chains and the parties involved, so suppliers, carriers, producers, customers, etc., within these chains. So we link them all together into collaborative platforms. That's what we do. And with these collaborative solutions, we cover all supply chain processes. So from sourcing and procurement to transportation management up until the final delivery at the final customer, with everything in between. And the way you have to see it is that we are everywhere where the goods are moving, as we say. So we're not in the warehouse itself or within the stock holding locations, but we manage everything around the different warehouses and around the different ERPs and WMSs that are used to manage these stock holding locations. So we integrate all the sources and all the links in the supply chains. The goal is then, of course, to gain insight into these full chains, improving the partnerships and the collaboration, and reducing the costs, among other benefits, of course. We've been implementing such solutions since 2000 and have ever since implemented over 400 projects worldwide with these collaborative solutions. So I'd just like to show you a video on our offering. So let me start.
It is not the strongest of the species that survives, not the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is the most adaptable to change. Nature works because everything is interconnected. Like a huge single conscience made of many little parts. We humans have learnt to study nature. Copy it. Enhance it. In the most effective and reliable ecosystems, everything is connected. Everything is tracked. Everything is notified. Tesisquare has evolved into one platform that connects everything, end-to-end with a control tower approach. Everything is in your control with our new UX improved experience. Choose the module that you need to connect all your business partners, physical devices, and data into one platform. Reduce costs and let your multi-enterprise network run's value. Increase the collaboration from source to pay cycle. Monitor and have full control of your supply chain. Drive your data on control tower approach and enhance your transportation management. Satisfy your customers by designing your omni-channel customer experience and control your performance by analytics. One world, one partner, one platform to connect everything. Tesisquare. Build your collaborative ecosystem.
So what sets Tesisquare apart from others? That's that if we basically put the customer at the center of each of our implementations. So we focus on the customer and not on the product. And we do this with applying our one partner approach, which basically means that we can support clients in a structured way throughout the entire process. And by doing so, we're able to provide support in projects where needed. So, for example, we can support customers in the field of change management, project management, training of the different users, end users, key users, etc. As a result, we provide turnkey projects, so ready to use for our customer. In addition to this, by means of innovation, we keep our solutions up to date with the market, and by doing so, making us a so-called one-stop partner, allowing us to support customers in their entire supply chain process. So they can come to us for all their supply chain solutions as a one-stop partner, basically. So this combined is our one partner approach, as we call it. So now that you have a better idea of who we are, on high level, of course, and we'll show you the solutions in a later moment, but we can begin to dive into the challenges that exist within modern day supply chains and how end-to-end visibility can help with solving these issues. So the end-to-end visibility journey. So end-to-end visibility is, of course, one of the hot topics within supply chain land, as supply chains are becoming more and more complex and interconnected, bringing with it more risks and challenges. So not all companies have insight into the risks and challenges within their supply chains. And as a consequence, there could be efficiency loss, costs, not being able to meet customer requirements, etc. So a good example of this that everybody, of course, knows is the current pandemic leading to major disruptions in supply chains. This is one of the risks that can be, and we'll show you this in the end of the presentation also, that can be managed with the end-to-end visibility. So there's a need to switch from single to multi-enterprise approach, meaning that you go from the single silo, the overview on one link in the chain, to the overview over the entire supply chain, end-to-end, multi-enterprise. So a switch like this can only be made through end-to-end solutions, allowing to remodel supply chains and to have insight into the risks and challenges that occur, and by doing so, make the supply chains more resilient for any future events. So the journey to take is one to go from complexity, lack of insight, and risks to a multi-enterprise, end-to-end visibility approach, allowing to remodel and make networks more resilient. And that's what we're going to further explain to you step by step. So we're going to start with the increasing complexity nowadays. So I will guide you through a couple of experiences that we as Tesisquare have with regard to the main challenges that logistical chains are currently affected by and that are increasing the complexity and need to have an overview over your supply chain and get this end-to-end insight. So furthermore, I'll explain how platforms like ours can enable you to deal with this increasing complexity. These are the four main trends that we recognize as challenges, basically, or subjects that you have to deal with within modern day supply chains. So we've divided them into technological trends, digital trends, social trends, and black swan events, such as the current pandemic. So events that are unexpected and not predictable, basically. These are the main influences on supply chains nowadays, which are to be governed with end-to-end visibility solutions. So starting off with the technological trends. So technological trends are increasingly influencing supply chains. So examples of this are, of course, the well-known Internet of Things and blockchain, through which chains are fed with significant amounts of data. And this real-time data can be a key factor in increasing resilience and reducing disruption also in case of unexpected events. So this big data approach has a huge impact on how supply chains can be managed. In addition, we have technologies related to automating operations, such as machine learning and robot process automation, so making processes more effective and efficient. And lastly, there has been a significant increase visible in the field of analytics and intelligence, meaning, of course, to do more with data present in processes. So this offers a lot of new possibilities and opportunities that have a strong influence also on how supply chains work nowadays. An example of technology related to this part, so to the advanced analytics and artificial intelligence, is the Tesisquare control tower, which we'll take a look at later on. So then another overview on the technological trend is the transformation that a lot of companies are going through nowadays. So this is an overview that Gartner has created. This shows the move from companies from a reactive to a orchestrating approach. So reactive being maybe what we call the single enterprise approach. So the visibility within your own silo, if you will, without having integrated all the different processes and systems within your own link as part of the chain. There where the orchestration role allows you to, or means that you've integrated all external and internal sources, or better said, end-to-end visibility. So the move from a single enterprise to a multi-enterprise approach is also shown here. So moving from limited visibility on risks and challenges also to a full supply chain control, allowing you to have overview end-to-end. So this is how this journey is to be undertaken. This transformation can, of course, only be made with the support of end-to-end visibility tools. Moving on. So, digital and social trends. The most well-known and the most relevant ones are, of course, supply chain sustainability. So, with the focus on reduction of waste, which is high on the agenda for a lot of the companies. Circular economy, focusing on the reuse, recycling, and returns of products and materials, and mobility and cloud community, or as a service, as we call it, which is a business model in which the provider maintains ownership of a product or asset after it's delivered. So these trends require supply chains, and therefore also the platforms, end-to-end platforms that support these supply chains, to be flexible when it comes to the incorporation of new solutions that arise related to these trends. So, for example, one of the modules that we have as part of the platform is or an integration that we have, better said, is with a partner that provides us with CO2 emission information, which focuses strongly on the sustainability trends that you see here on the right side. So this is just an example of how this influences supply chains and the software platforms that have to support them. And then lastly, we have the Black Swan events. So the main influencer of supply chains nowadays, unexpected events such as the current pandemic, of course. So events like these strongly disrupt processes, for example, when it comes to suppliers that were unable to produce and supply and therefore feed into their customers' processes. And later on, we will explain how to manage specific scenarios like these black swans with the end-to-end visibility. So that's one of the IT actions required. Because these unplanned events required to make supply chains more resilient, to increase the capacity to not just detect, but react and redesign processes. And to do so, IT software end-to-end platforms form a crucial role, allowing you to make this switch. So this is what we're going to talk about. So the described challenges and the risks that we've just mentioned can cause major disruptions within supply chains. Of course, it's not possible to fully predict all these events, like COVID-19. However, supply chains can be redesigned in order to be able to be more resilient in case an event such as these occur. It's crucial that companies get insight into the change and the various risks that threaten them. And in order to do so, companies need to make this switch that we've mentioned before from a single enterprise to a multi-enterprise approach. So moving from the one link in the chain to a complete overview over the entire supply chain. This switch can be made with the enterprise platforms such as ours, such as Tesisquare's, that form an important role for gaining this insight and making your supply chain resilient. So what are multi-enterprise platforms, or end-to-end platforms, if you will? So these are platforms designed to orchestrate and manage the different flows and different interactions in extended supply chain processes. So as you can see here, there are a lot of different actors that are relevant or active within networks. So you can see the different suppliers that you have, the forwarders, the manufacturers, the carriers, the couriers, the different stores or e-commerce hubs, and the final customer. All these different actors are involved in a certain way in your supply chain, and the platforms that we provide allow to orchestrate and manage the processes that you work on with these different actors. So we support everything from the sourcing and procurement side of the business up to the execution, transportation management, and the final delivery to the final customer. So the idea is that these platforms manage all processes in your supply chain with all actors involved. So all actors that you can see described here. Of course, there are a lot of different challenges and risks that are present within these processes. And with these platforms, you allow yourself to have real-time collaboration and insight into the process that you manage, for example, with your supplier or with your manufacturer or with your stores or carriers. And by doing so, improve the efficiency, reduce the amount of labor required, and also a failure because of manual activities and the costs involved. So the platform that we provide, the Tesisquare platform, provides features and functionalities that support the collaboration in this process. And how do we do this? With our platform, as you can see here. So this image shows the Tesisquare platform. It's a modular platform, so as you can see, there are a lot of different names here written down, the different modules that we have, and together they cover the full supply chain process. So for us, this is an end-to-end supply chain platform. Each single one of these modules is a separate solution that can be implemented separately as a separate project. So when we talk about TC-SCM or TC-TMS, it's not that we, in case of a project, implement the full SCM suite or a full TMS suite necessarily. Of course, it's possible, but each one and single one of these modules can be implemented separately. Again, we are everywhere where the goods are moving, so the solutions that we have here focus on the movement of the goods. So we start with the sourcing, procurement, and execution side on inbound, so vendor management, bid management, and contract management, which we'll get back to later on. The procurement part of everything and the execution. And then on the TMS side, we have the planning, collaboration, execution, and costing. Just to be clear, end-to-end management of a process doesn't mean necessarily that you have to implement all these modules. The idea is that, for example, when you implement one of these modules, you can manage that process end-to-end with the actors involved. So, for example, tracking, tracing, planning, etc. Or order management could be an example of this. Some of the main features that we want to highlight. So the platform allows seamless integration with all participants. So we've seen the different types of actors that are relevant in supply chain processes. And with our platform, we allow to seamlessly integrate all these participants. So, for example, we integrate the carriers, we integrate the suppliers, we integrate the different customers, etc. Also, of course, the ERPs and the WMS is revolving in this process. Then we have real-time updating. So we apply a management by exception approach to all our solutions. So allowing to not having to manage all orders, all transports, all bookings, etc. in the process, but just the ones that require the attention. And the focus is the effective collaboration by using a workflow and proactive alerting system to increase efficiency. So we implement an automatic workflow system for you as a customer that we set up in the project, allowing to work as efficient and effective as possible. So the goal of all our solutions is to ensure a sharing of relevant information between all parties involved to allow users to make the right decisions that benefit not only the supply chain orchestrator, but the entire supply chain. And as we call it, in this case, you're building your own collaborative ecosystem. So with this one platform that provides all these solutions, you enable the visibility and collaboration within your supply chain process. So you're building your own ecosystem with all actors onboarded on it, with over 30 modules that we can provide. Again, separate modules. So by providing them separately as separate solutions, we address processes faster, allow to deploy easier and faster and more cost effective. So instead of having to buy the full toolkit, theoretically, you can just go for one of the different solutions. Right now, we have over 55,000 unique users working on the platforms of our customers. You have to imagine that a lot of our customers have integrations with their supply chain actors, so they don't work on the solutions itself, so they're not taking into account in this number. But there are 55,000 that are actually working on the platform itself. And because of this, so because of the way that the platform manages the collaborative processes that we've described and the high amount of transactions and users, we have been named by Gartner in the Magic Quadrant of the Multi-Enterprise Supply Chain Business Networks since 2018. So we're the only Italian company that is included in this report, and for us, of course, this is a big challenge. So the Multi-Enterprise Supply Chain Business Networks quadrant focuses on end-to-end supply chain management. So not just TMS or SCM, but the end-to-end possibility to cover the full supply chain process. So they position normally 12 vendors based on their ability to execute and their completeness of vision into this quadrant. So this is, of course, a big achievement for us as a company. Moving into the specifics of the platform and to further explain them to you one by one. So we're going to start with the framework because the framework is considered to be the backbone of everything that we, or all solutions that we provide. So the framework consists out of all rules, sets, master data, etc. that we use to run applications. So for every single module, we support it with the framework that we have. There is a standard for all of these rule sets, etc., and we modify them in the project for every one of our customers. So each module has its own set of rules. And in this framework, we normally set 7 different high-level parameters. So we start with drawing the organization, so system-wise. Then we set up all the different users and roles that are relevant for your process. So it could be a planner, could be a carrier, could be a buyer, for example, depending on which process and which module you want to use. And then in a later moment, you link the users to these different roles. And we manage all the master data in it, so carrier master data, unloading, loading, point master data, users, etc. We have a document management system that we set up, so we define which documents to manage and how. The workflow is defined, which is of course very important for every customer because everybody has a different process. And we set the alerting and notifications linked to the processes. So every event can trigger a certain alert, and this is something that we define in the framework for every solution with the customer. In addition to this, we have dashboards and widgets that we set up, so every user has its own real-time dashboard, allowing to have real-time insight in its own data. So we set up a separate dashboard for every user role within a process, allowing them to work efficiently and via a management by exception approach. The alerting and notification is something that's very important as a feature of the of our platform because it allows to alert and to warn people in real time that they have to perform a certain action on a certain process. So, for example, orders are published, or bookings are created, or transport is published to you, or something is going wrong on a transport. Could be anything. And with our solutions, we allow to send basically in any event to any actor via any channel a notification. So by doing so, we keep everybody up to date in real time about the processes. And as you can see here, we can do this via email, SMS, or simply via mobile app, or with logging into the actual platform where they will see their own dashboards and can view the news on the portals. So this enhances real-time visibility with third parties. That's the main idea. Then we move on into the integration brokerage layer. And the integration brokerage layer allows us to integrate all the different parties in your supply chain. So as we've seen in the beginning of the presentation, there are a lot of different companies or partners in your supply chain that are working with you on the several processes. And all of these partners need to be integrated into the platform. So we do this with our integration brokerage layer, which is basically a tool set that allows us to be flexible when it comes to the channels of communication that you want to set up. So this allows us to link internal and external parties. So in projects, we will of course integrate your ERP or your WMS, but we're also able to integrate the different carriers, the different customers via any one of the tools that we show here. So from big companies to small companies, they can be integrated in a way that you as a customer prefer. With, of course, the goal to have everybody on one platform, on a single application, with one view in real time on the same data. And we do this by supporting all sources of communication. So as you can see here, the users that are typically involved in the processes, the internal users, the suppliers, and the carriers, can use any device that they want. And with these devices, we can then get the information into the platform via any different communication channel that you want. So we can set up the web servers, we can set up the private EDI ERP flows, we can set up the web EDI, etc. The idea is that, as we say in the bottom also, the multi-channel feature allows companies to get all the data in a structured and unstructured way into a unique model, avoiding manual input mistakes. In addition to this, we're a certified EDI provider present on 4 continents and over 33 countries. And we're the first B2B internet brokerage provider in Italy in the consumer goods industry. So right now, we manage approximately 129 million business transactions a year via or with our EDI services. And as you can see, we're certified throughout to do this. So this is EDI is, of course, quite a sophisticated way of exchanging data, but we can provide a lot of services when it comes to the specific types of messages. And then again, we're very flexible when it comes to the different types of messages and formats that we can support for you. So depending on the customer needs, we can support with our platform all the different message types that you want, basically. So you see the different messages, the different formats, and the different transmissions. So, for example, if a supply chain partner is not able to, because they're not matured when it comes to the IT backbone, to set up an EDI integration, we can set up an FTP and allow them to exchange XMLs. For example, there are a lot of different ways of getting the data, but we're very flexible when it comes to this. And as a last option, we provide our mobile application to companies in your process, which is native with our own platform, of course. And this allows you to also work in different processes in our platform. So, for example, you can use it in the tracking and execution phase. You can use it in the yard management. And by doing so, companies that do not have their own telematics, for example, in the transportation execution process, can use the mobile app and still be able to work in an efficient way in real time with the platform. So this is another way for us to get the data into the platform from your different supply chain partners. The mobile app runs on Android, iOS, and Windows, of course, and it's cloud-based, and we can integrate it with third-party applications. Moving on into the specifics of the modules. So as we have described, the sourcing, procurement, and execution is generally on the inbound side, of course. And every single block that you see below that are separate modules. So, for example, we manage the vendor management, so the actual supplier registration, evaluation, and monitoring. We have bid management solutions that support the bid management and negotiation, evaluation, offer, and comparison. And we have contracts as a result of this process, so the inbound contract management. Then we support the procurement process with our catalog and price list management solutions, spend management, so focusing on the budget management more, and the purchase request processing at the end of this process. Then moving on into the execution solutions, we support order management, or we provide order management solutions that allow you to perform actual publishing, negotiation, and agreeing upon of different POs with your suppliers via integration or manually on the platform. The inbound management, so with the different ASNs, and the invoices related to the inbound, to the purchasing process. Then, just to summarize, so the sourcing focuses on the digitalizing of the sourcing events, from supplier registration to contract management. The procurement allows you to take advantage from digitalization to benefit from the cost saving, and the execution supports the collaborative process with suppliers to plan, manage, and better control the goods and service flows. So from fulfillment to warehousing. So this is the SCM suite as part of our total platform. The main benefits or improvements, if you will, are that with these functionalities, we extend and complement ERP functionalities. So in general, ERPs have functionalities that focus on sourcing and procurement activities. However, the functionalities that we provide extend and complement these ERP functionalities. So for example, the order management that we've mentioned before is not something that a lot of ERP systems generally have in them. So we provide this functionality or this module extending the ERP functionalities, in which case we of course integrate the ERP with our integration brokerage layer. Then the benefit is of course that you integrate and have visibility on all suppliers, and that you're able to optimize the purchasing cycle as a result. The TMS side of our platform focuses on the transportation management, so real-time transportation management, with all the different modules involved. So you can see here that we manage the planning, collaboration, execution, and costing, both for in and outbound. So the planning part focuses on the actual creation of the routes. So we import all the different orders, both in and outbound, from an external source, and we allow users to work, or planners to work, in a real-time planning dashboard with cartography, with everything they need to create trips from the different, or with the different orders. Then we have the optimal carrier solution that focuses on the selection of the optimal carrier based on the contracts in the system. So based on the carriers that you have a contract with that are able to take care of a certain transport, we can automatically propose to you which one to select. And we provide route optimization solutions that take all the orders and automatically bundle them into transport with all the criteria relevant in the process. So if you, as you can imagine, a lot of our customers manage thousands of orders. So they don't want to manually plan them one by one. So with the optimization engines, we allow to plan everything automatically, after which the planners only have to tweak where required, and then send the different trips to the various carriers selected automatically in this optimization process. After all the trips are planned, or all the orders are planned into trips, better said, and the carrier is assigned, we engage the carrier and start with the collaboration process. So the collaboration modules focus on carrier engagement, so the carrier can actually manage its own trips, see which ones are to be accepted or to be executed, and if required, perform loading or unloading booking activities. So the loading and unloading booking, slot booking solution focuses on the management of the different slots at the warehouses or production facilities. And in general, this is something that can be done by you as a planner or by a carrier. So they support the full slot booking process, including all the different warehouses, segments, logic, rules in the background, etc. Then we have the yard management solutions that focus on the actual management of the carriers in the yard, so allowing you to measure when they have arrived, when they depart, and everything in between. So by doing so, you can perform carrier or supplier management. And then as soon as everything's planned, booked, and loaded in case of an outbound shipment, you move into the execution part. So we support everything when it comes to track and trace and visibility. So we have the different dashboards in all the statuses that you want to manage in your process. We get all the different updates from external sources, such as your carriers, including the documentation, so PODs, etc., and allow also customer care to have insight or overview over all these shipments to have real-time insight into the status updates and the status of the different shipments. And we manage the reverse logistics linked to the process. The backbone of also the optimal carrier selection and some other processes is the costing part. So we manage all the carrier and also customer contracts, if you will. So we have all the different rates for all the different lanes, allowing you to calculate all the costs throughout the transportation process and perform rate simulation, if you will. So what is going to happen if I'm going to use this carrier for these lanes, and create pre-invoices as a final result of the process. So you can create the pre-invoices that tell you what you are supposed to pay the carrier instead of being having to rely on the invoice that you're going to receive from him. So everything revolving around the transportation costs can be managed with these solutions. To summarize, everything starts with the planning or the binding of orders into shipments. Then we have the collaboration part where the carrier is assigned and engaged. The execution to control the shipments up to the delivery to the final destination, and the costing to support the calculation of the transportation costs, calculation and the tariffs per shipment, and generating transport invoices. The idea with our team is that we manage all processes, so both in and outbound, all suppliers, so outsourcers, 3/4PLs, couriers, etc., all transportation modes, so truck, sea, air, and train, all phases, so MONI and multi-leg, all inbound flows, and all delivery models, so ship to customer, ship to warehouse, home delivery, e-commerce, etc. Because transportation costs are more than 50% of the supply chain logistical costs, this is, of course, very important to manage end-to-end. The main benefits are to take control over your full transportation supply chain, reducing the costs end-to-end, and to improve the customer service level by having this insight and being able to manage everything. As a result, we have been noted as a notable vendor in the context of the Magic Quadrant. So the previous Gartner quadrant that we showed you focuses on end-to-end multi-enterprise supply chain business networks. This quadrant specifically focuses on TMS, so we're not noted in the quadrant itself, but as a notable vendor in the context. So that's the first step to leading up to hopefully at some point being mentioned in the quadrant itself. So now we've talked about the various challenges and risks that occur within modern day supply chains and the way that companies can make a switch from from single enterprise to a multi-enterprise approach. They can start with gaining insights into the processes and the risks that are present from end to end. This insight can be gained with our control tower that provides companies with insight by using data that is present in the processes, so functional and transactional data, that you manage within the multi-enterprise platform. So if you would, for example, manage the order management or the execution on inbound, the control tower can take the data from this execution process and allow you to do more with this data, which I'll show you later on. And by doing so, of course, supply chain leaders are enabled to remodel supply chains and to make them more resilient for any future events. So the control tower that I've just mentioned is a tool that provides the options for synthesis, analysis, control, and management of events through KPIs, dashboards, etc. So what we do is, like I've mentioned before, we take the data from a process and we allow you to build your own dashboards and KPIs upon it and perform analysis on the data that you have in the day-by-day processes. Just to underline, the control tower is also a separate module that we can also use by integrating external sources and then allowing you to build the dashboards and the different KPIs on top of it. But the combination of the both, so the platform that we have with the control tower provides you with this end-to-end insight, allowing you to manage the risks, to get insight into your risks and to manage them in a later moment. So the definition of a control tower, of course, there are a lot of different definitions, but the one of Gartner is the most popular. So the way they describe it is that a control tower is a physical or virtual dashboard to provide accurate, timely, and complete logistical events and data, of course, within and across organizations and services operating supply chains to coordinate all related activities. So basically, taking the different data and events from your processes and performing analysis upon them. And the TESI control tower, in this case, provides a tool set for analysis, control, and governance of this data. So what we do is we provide a couple of different scenarios that you can manage. So first of all, there is, of course, the what happened scenario. So you extracting data from your process and performing analysis upon it with a pre-configured set of reports and widgets, so which we have defined based on a score model. So by doing so, you can make the analysis on events that occurred. And then we have the what will happen scenario, so to access accurate forecasting and near zero delay. So this allows you to make proactive changes in real time, so in case you see that an event will occur. And then in addition to this, we have the how can we make it happen or prevent it from happening scenarios by focusing on the efficiency of specific processes. So this is a what-if scenario that you can manage with these control tower, allowing you to use optimization algorithms and decision rules that provide you upfront with the possibility to prevent it from happening or just making it happen based on the data that you have. So what does this look like? First of all, the control tower provides you with visibility analytics. So we have a widget library with ready-to-use KPIs that we have defined based on a score model and on best practices and market trends. So we can provide, or this control tower provides insight based on fixed KPI reports and KPIs that we have defined also with our customers in real time, of course, and it's still customizable in this case by our clients to tweak it in a way that they want to manage their own dashboards. You can drill down all the way to the SKU and create reports as you will, so filtering, etc. So this is the what happened scenario basically at first. And then in addition to this, we have the self-service analytics that allow users to build their own reports in their control tower. So in order to get end-to-end insight into specific risks or specific challenges in your supply chain, you can build your own reports, KPIs, and alerts also, depending on the process that you wish to manage. So you can share these reports with users automatically. All the information can be built in different charts and graphs as you will. And by doing so, you create your own KPI dashboards, basically. So there where the previous slide that we've shown to you is more a preset of predefined KPIs. This allows you to create your own reports, your own dashboards, depending on the process that you wish to see and manage. And in addition to this, we have proactive analytics. So alerts in case events occur or will occur. So for example, in case you have an agreement with a customer contractually that the OTIF needs to be 95%, you can set an alert for this specific event, for this specific customer, and proactively receive an alert if it starts to, if you see that in the future, for example, you will not meet it for any reason. And I will show you another example of how this works for the COVID-19 scenario in a later moment. Users can customize their own KPIs, messages, receivers, conditions, and frequency in this case, and by doing so, send alerts and proactively manage the supply chain with all the users that are involved. So By doing this, you can manage the different risks and events within your supply chain, basically. So taking the data from the day-to-day processes, allowing you to manage your process in a proactive way, making it more resilient. So the combination of the solutions described in the platform and the overlaying control tower provide you with the end-to-end visibility that we've mentioned a couple of times before. So this brings with it, of course, a couple of benefits. So to start, you're enabled to enhance a complete control over suppliers and the service level towards the final customer. You are then able to meet the customer service level in a better way and to also reduce lead times. By having this end-to-end insight, you can undertake and govern indirect spending and also initiate reorganization projects such as lean manufacturing. Without having insight into the full process, of course, it's very difficult to implement something like lean manufacturing. And lastly, you have consolidated data from all different incoming IT sources or systems. So the platform and the integration layer and everything combined allow you to harmonize all the data and have insight into one platform in real time with all users involved in the process. So this is, of course, a big benefit. As described, we have now moved from a single enterprise approach to a multi-enterprise approach with end-to-end visibility. So when having achieved this insight, the analysis and managing of the actual risks can start. So I already briefly mentioned them when talking about the control tower. But now we can specifically talk about the risk management in supply chains. Because risk management has become, of course, more and more actual these days. So there's a strong demand in the market for insight into these risks to prevent disruptions such as the consequences of the COVID pandemic. Before, the drivers always were cost and service levels, so more controlling, if you will. But now the factor risk has become even more or evenly important for the management and the sustainability of networks or supply chains. So measuring and managing the array of risks is, of course, a complex task due to the fact that it's extremely difficult to prepare for compared to risks like quality control issues or mechanical failures, for example, which are generally easier to predict. But solutions like a control tower or a platform in combination with a control tower allow companies to map these risks and to use them to make the supply chains more resilient and future-proof. So it's impossible to predict them in full, of course, but you can try and have insight into these risks and at least try to be prepared and more resilient in case any of them occur. Just a couple of examples of risks that might occur and that you can manage with these solutions. So supply chains are in fact impacted by different risks to be named, for example, unforeseen threats, such as black swan events, but also political instability in the countries where your suppliers could be based or your manufacturing facilities could be based, or customer behavior. So it's also something that could be unpredictable. And then there are the process disruptions. So, for example, if a factory slows down, which could have a significant impact on your own production, or if it's a factory of a supplier's production. Regulatory standards, so environmental standards or health, safety, and quality standards, and issues of a supplier itself. So when a supplier could have a shortfall, or even worse, go bankrupt. This could have a heavy influence on your own process and the way that you're able to meet your customer requirements. So what we've done is we have set up an integration with external databases that manage and monitor risks worldwide and feed back this data into our platform and risk management analysis. So by doing so, complete insight on all risks can be gained. So we're going to show you an example of how we do this. So this is an example dashboard that we use to measure geographical risk. So geographical risk has several factors that have to be considered. So, for example, natural catastrophes, political financial instability, insurance coverage, or regulatory compliance. And if we use the COVID scenario for this, there are a couple of drivers that, for example, are used to determine a risk within a supplier base in this geographical risk analysis. So in that case, we take the amount of infections, as you can see here, the classification per country, so the color indication, red, orange, etc., and the supplier categorization. So if it's critical supplier, if it's a medium critical supplier, or not critical at all. So by doing so, you can build these dashboards and see what the status is per country in your supplier base, and then you can undertake action upon it. In addition to this, with our control tower and with these solutions, we provide the option to predict the situation over the next period, so weeks, months. And based on this, we can then allow you to undertake actions based on the outcome of this analysis. So making your supply chain more resilient based on this end-to-end visibility and insight into your risks. And how do we generally approach these projects? Well, there's a certain methodology that, in this case, we've used the example again of the supplier geographical risks. So in general, you start with setting the goals. So what kind of parameters do you want to measure in the analysis? So it could be the financial status, the level of compliance of a supplier, or the capacity, or the country where the supplier is based or produces, which can be different, of course, the economical and political risks, the level of compliance again, and natural hazards. These are just examples of factors that you want to consider in a risk analysis. After this, you generally identify the scope of the risk analysis. So what do you want the scope to be? So which construction sites, which plants, which businesses, which countries even. Then after this, which sources of data do you want to include in your analysis? So do we have to integrate external data sources such as the COVID numbers that we've shown to you before? Or an import from an ERP needs to be set up, or we need to use certain master data, etc. Lastly, you define which risks you want to measure with the parameters that are defined. So, for example, you want to set up a list of the risks to monitor, you want to identify the countries covered by the analysis, etc. So this is creating of the scope, so the parameters and the scope. As soon as this is done, we normally start with setting up the indexes and starting with the monitoring. So you define on which level you wish to measure the risks. So, for example, per country, per category, etc. You take, of course, into account purchase history, extended or expected purchases, and the current portfolio, after which you can run a simulation. So the simulation is then to be reviewed, and the idea is that based on the reviewing of the simulation, you can then undertake action. So what we've done with these steps is that we basically defined which parameters you want to measure, what is the scope within your end-to-end process. So, for example, in your supplier base, and after completing this analysis, you can perform a review after simulation. So one of the examples could be that based on the outcome of this analysis, you would have to identify an alternative supplier list, for example, or create a supplier blacklist. So by having insight into these risks, you can undertake actions such as these, or better said, make your supply chain more resilient to prevent that issues have a big impact on your supply chain. So this is how the control tower tools can help you with getting this insight and with working with the data that you have to make it more resilient for future events. Generally, we manage a couple of project steps or phases in this case. So what we normally do for risk projects or for these analysis projects is that we integrate customer legacy systems, so an ERP or another system, and connect with info data providers. Then we configure based on what you as a customer want the user profiles and access rights, and we parameterize the system based on your requirements. Then there's a POC and customization phase, moving into a pilot, after which we normally deploy and go live. So after we've defined with you what the solution should look like and how it should work, we can provide it to you, deploy it, and then go live, including user acceptance test, of course, training, and go live support. Here are some possibilities of main benefits basically. So by implementing a risk analysis, you as a company are enabled to increase data to better balance demand, make, and supply. You're enabled to monitor suppliers with these solutions. It allows you to mitigate negative events occurring on shipments, so in real time, of course, and to analyze factors that can affect your sales forecast. And as a result, you can identify possible corrective actions to mitigate these risks. So what we've just shown to you also with the supplier analysis, you can undertake actions with the end-to-end visibility and with the risk management analysis to make your supply chain more resilient. So identify possible corrective actions to mitigate these risks in your supply chain. So that's the outcome. And the main benefits then, of course, are that you can set up an agile partnership with all third parties involved in your supply chain. You're allowed to monitor supply chain risks in a proactive manner, better meet market requests by receiving updated information on supplier statuses, and you're enabled to share, as a main benefit, to share data appropriately across the supplier network. So this provides you with a lot of benefits that can benefit your supply chain in general. And this completes our presentation. So we're exactly on time. Again, thank you for taking the time today to take a look at our offering. I hope it was clear to you, and in case there are any questions or if you want to talk to us about any one of these subjects, please do not hesitate to reach out to us via email, as you can see here, after which we're of course more than happy to further talk to you about the subjects that we've touched today. Thank you again, and we hope to hear from you very soon.